Here we have Danny Brewster. He's going to talk to us about a controversial topic, which is why building stuff in cryptocurrency is more important than the price. Boo. Round of applause for Danny, please.
Okay, first of all, I'll apologise. My preparation for this today hasn't been great because I've been building, which I'll get onto towards the end, but don't worry, it's not a big sales pitch or anything like that. So a little bit about myself. I discovered Bitcoin late 2011, really early 2012. Similar to William, who was on just before me, I had a broken wrist, couldn't really do much, so sat around reading blogs. I'd worked in the banking sector here in the UK from the age of 16, and technology had always interested me from a school age, from mid-teens. So the fit between the technology and the financial world was just perfect. It took me a little while to get my head truly around what Bitcoin is. In 2012, I moved to Cyprus. My daughter's mother married somebody in the RAF. They got posted to Cyprus. So I moved to Cyprus so I could maintain a decent relationship with my daughter. Whilst I was there, I lived through the bank bail-ins. I don't know how many people are familiar with what actually happened in Cyprus. Basically, the banks went bankrupt like they did everywhere else. But what they did instead of bailing them out was they bailed them in. 50% of everything anybody had in their account over 100,000 euros was confiscated to recapitalise the banks. The initial plan was to take 8% of everything over 1,000 euros. But luckily enough, they changed it so it only impacted the rich. Because of that, and witnessing everything, I started a company. I had an idea that could bring Bitcoin mass adoption within Cyprus. It was a really dumb idea on reflection, but I'll go through that. That company exploded in a ball of controversy. Following that, there was a European arrest warrant issued for myself. I received threats. I was back in the UK for 5 days. It all just went sour. I had to basically keep silent for 3 years whilst I sorted everything out. I went through extradition proceedings, which wasn't very nice, but par for the course. I became pretty irrelevant within this space, and it's brilliant. Nobody knows who I am anymore. There's so many new faces, and it's just great. But what I did do during that time was I repolished some coding skills that I had when I was younger, and just continued building solutions and ideas and little projects that I had prior to everything with NeoRB. So NeoRB, that there was the first and only flagship branch that was created. The idea for NeoRB was to create a physical location and basically create a set of services that would allow people to interact with Bitcoin and use Bitcoin in a way that they've become accustomed to with the traditional financial services. In Cyprus, there was very much an old-fashioned populace. 70% still believe God created the universe and everything. And following a misjudgment of my own at that time was thinking, oh, people will be ripe for change because of having witnessed the bail-ins. But what actually played out was Hellenic Bank was owned by the church, and it was put up for auction. So the church needed to raise funds to basically buy their own bank back. And what they did, the church issued a bond in the name of a saint, and people were queuing around the blocks to give the church money that they'd already lost and had taken away from them, to give it back to the church. And that was the mentality of the people. Not everybody was like that in Cyprus. So what was developed was the physical location, which looked like an Apple store. It was absolutely beautiful, but extremely capital intensive. We created payment terminals and a card system, so we were going head to head with Visa and MasterCard, but locally in Cyprus, with plans to expand that throughout the world. But unfortunately, through partial mistakes of my own and something of an internal mutiny, I made some really bad hiring decisions. Just another piece on NeoMB. Many people have probably seen this image on every CNBC article that they've ever published, and that is actually the doors to the offices of NeoMB. So it lives on through CNBC. When everything went a bit crazy, I've gone into detail on the Bitcoin Uncensored podcast with Chris DeRose about how it happened and what happened. But there was accusations made against myself by 5 people. Those accusations were theft, forgery, obtaining credit under false pretenses, obtaining goods under false pretenses, procuring execution documents by false pretenses, uttering a false document, and money laundering. The last one, I think they just threw in to give it extra weight because it added an extra 14 years to the combined prison time that they wanted to throw at me for apparently doing all these things. But what actually happened was the people that made the accusations broke cover and offered me the chance to sign over all the software, hardware, and everything that was created to make all of these legal problems go away. So I was essentially being blackmailed by the people that had caused everything. When I created NeoMB, I was stupid and raised capital from within the community. And a lot of people felt hard done by it, like they'd been hurt by the situation. They had basically backed me with their Bitcoins to create the company and the dream and basically make them rich. I've received an awful lot of hate mail, messages, news articles written about me were like just wrong on so many levels. The Daily Mail ran an article regarding a Bentley driving Britain abroad is wanted by the Cypriot authorities. And to be fair, the book stops here. I made the decisions to hire some of these people and to involve some of these people with the company. But I got through it. Everything was shut down. The Cypriot police are now helping me take civil action against the people that made the accusations so I can finally make the people that back NeoMB essentially whole again. I have some gripes with the way that the Bitcoin community has gone now. People still tend to have idols and things like that. But if the people you look up to look like him on the left and not him on the right, if you don't know who that is on the right, that is Peter Woolley, never pronounce it. Core developer, contributed so much to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And then you've got somebody that has a meltdown because the price has dropped by $1,000. And yeah, he comes out of nowhere and people hold him in high esteem because he's got a candelabra and does stupidly long YouTube live broadcasts in 4K with the best keyboard. And yeah, if you look up to that kind of guy in the space and not the one on the right, then yeah, we're probably not going to get along too great. What I've seen, I was lucky enough with the time away that I could just step back and just watch things unfold. There's a lot of get-rich-quick types that have come into the space that just overnight Lambo, everything's Lambo. We'll pump whatever bag we're holding, and yeah, that's your shitcoin pumpers. I apologise for my language. I should have done that before. Blockchain bros. You can go to conferences all over the world and you can spot them a mile away. They're blockchain, not Bitcoin. Yeah, no. Just doesn't really wash. your DLT is probably better as a MySQL database. Reddit used to have some technical discussion. Now it's just price memes. Oh, 9,000. Oh, we can reuse the 7,000 memes, and everything's good for Bitcoin. SegWit2x was an abomination. Luckily, people didn't actually run the code because it would have stopped. And that's what happens when people create flawed business models. And perhaps if Neo and B would have succeeded, I might have been on that side of things. I don't know. Because ultimately the business model was flawed. Didn't really take into consideration the scaling issues that we've finally faced, but I was aware of them. And last but not least, Bcash. It's like a cancer on the Bitcoin ecosystem. There's not too many great minds that have left Bitcoin to go on to Bcash, but if all of the virtual and the hatred and the bickering and the politics, if all that energy was channeled into building infrastructure, solutions, products to make Bitcoin even better, maybe Bcash will turn out in making Bitcoin better because it can show that it can survive an attack by a few rich guys that want to have things done their own way, and also prove that block propagation times is an actual real issue that we need to face if we were to increase the size of the base block size. I do moan a lot, but this is the last one. The ICO craze. I did something very similar with Neo and B. It was very stupid, very dumb. I received a lot of hatred for it once everything had gone wrong, and people realised that I wasn't going to make them as rich as they thought overnight. It's happening all over again with ICOs, and people are just throwing money at them left, right and centre. We went through this in 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014, not so much towards the end of 2014, but there was the 3 Bitcoin stock exchanges with really shady shit going down on. They all turned into rubbish, and the operator of one was arrested for obscuring the course of justice in America. Ukio, or John Montrell, his name was, that I was kind of heavily involved with, unfortunately. The media still put out the same faux pas arguments against Bitcoin every time they want to run a negative article. There's something called the Murray-Gell-Hellman amnesia effect, I believe it is, where I don't know if you've ever read a newspaper article on a subject that you know really well, and you know that it's full of misinformation, it's full of mistakes, and just completely incorrect because it's written by a journalist that has to write about every subject. You then turn over the page and then you read about some kids being bombed in Syria or something else, and you take it as actual fact, and it's going to be true. And that is what that psychological condition is called, that you forget that you know that the journalist that wrote about a subject that you know is completely incorrect, but you take the next article that you don't know very much about as being guaranteed fact. And that happens with Bitcoin. And you have to remember that happens with the average Joe in the street that is hearing about Bitcoin, and that's why I still get phone calls off people saying, oh, Bitcoin's on TV. They're saying it's really bad and that terrorists use it, and think of the children and this, that and the other, every negative that's generally used when they don't really understand something. Scapegoating as well, like within the community. It happened a couple of weeks ago. Mt. Gox, the trustee, sold some coins off with the authority of the court, and people just immediately, oh, we need to sue him, we need to do this, we need to do that. He's the worst person ever. He dropped the price from 20,000 to 6,000. It's his fault. Whereas, no, it was in a bubble. this happens. It's happened throughout the history of Bitcoin, right from when it went up to $1 for the first time and then crashed back down. The community, I say community, of those that shout the loudest generally have the least to lose. And that is something that I have found throughout time. The people that have got the biggest wealth in Bitcoin, it's a 50-year project. They just keep their head down, carry on, keep moving forward. So, with everything that I've seen just recently, a lot of the focus is based around the price and the movement and trading and everything. But for me, Bitcoin is about the technology and what it can inspire and what it can achieve. And what people tend to forget is without the people that contribute the code or build the projects or build the companies or build the services that are there for the ecosystem to grow, without them, they'll be trading on for nothing, because there'd be nowhere to use them, nowhere to buy them, nowhere to sell them, nothing to exchange them for. Even running your own shop where you've integrated a Bitcoin payment gateway, that is building something that helps the ecosystem. That enables us to start building a closed loop economy that can really drive this forward and to be where, obviously, we all want Bitcoin to be worth $1 million each and things like that. But without people building more and more and taking the time, I'm not a world-class coder. I'd be absolutely nothing if I was to commit code to the core repository and things like that. I'll probably get laughed out of the building. But what I can do is I can build web applications and things like that. And there's so much information and resources now on how to build and how to learn to code. And it's got simpler and simpler over time. You don't have to write in C or C++ anymore to build something that is really useful for the ecosystem. So what I would say, and something that I've always tried to promote, is just build something, put your meat on the block, even if it's free or just a simple service or anything like that, or a simple resource that you find that you could use or would be useful for yourself or for somebody else. Open it up, let people take the criticisms, improve upon it. There is some really great people that will give you some really constructive feedback and literally help you build cool shit that will take this entire space forward another level. It's great seeing 10,000, 20,000 Bitcoin prices because, woohoo, we can all buy a Lambo. But really, we're just at the beginning and there is so many opportunities. I could go on for days, and especially now with the Lightning Network, that second layer and what that can enable. Blockstream have done their week of dApps, which I think was just a great indication of how quickly things can be turned around and implemented now using Lightning Network. The libraries and the tools to make that happen are going to start becoming more readily available. So anybody can sit down, get onto YouTube, learn how to code. Even if you think, oh, I'm only self-taught, there's people that are going to college and university to learn to code. A lot of the best developers in the world are self-taught. So the one piece of advice that I would say is just go out there, build stuff, get behind people that are building stuff, spend your coins, replace them. When you spend them, let's create a circular economy so we don't need to worry about businesses getting bank accounts shut down and everything like that. It's like the world is our oyster, basically. It's still so early. Even if you feel that, oh, I just got in 2017 because I thought I was going to get rich, there is a percentage of people that will come for the money and stay because of the movement, and we need to move forward everything. All right, Dan, you matter too. Just sort of, I'm glad you missed the point about pumping shit coins and. Yeah, we've already covered that in my ramblings. Should we go back to it? But with everything that I have said about builders and creating things, traders actually do matter. They enable us to not have to send 100,000 bitcoins to transact $10. And they are a reactionary bunch. They do get on YouTube and meltdown and things like that. But if you know traders, or if you are a trader, I'm pretty sure you can see an opportunity for yourself to build something. If you can't fund it, like I say, teach yourself to code and develop it, even if it takes you 2-3 years. What I've been building whilst on my enforced absence has taken me 2.5 years to get to the point where in a month's time it's going to be live and rolling out across the UK. And I promise not to pump it. But it's not an ICO or anything like that. So yeah, everybody in the ecosystem really matters. But for me, people that build or people that have an idea, they should find the confidence to teach themselves to code if they can't code already, and look to move forward. Just don't come to me for advice about blockchain, all the things, because for me, I'm very much a maximalist when it comes to Bitcoin. Sorry, Dan. So yeah, like as I said, I apologise that my presentation wasn't brilliant and my preparation for this wasn't great, but I've been a little bit busy and occupied. So I'll open it up to questions. It's 20 minutes, better than I thought I'd manage. Rambling.
The closing slide there, so that's why I was waiting for it.
No, I just thought Dan crying into his empty bags of Tron or whatever.
Let's have a quick round of applause for Danny, please. Round of applause for Danny. Come on, let's have it.
There you go, Dan.
Bag holder.
You hold your bags.
Official bag holder. Yeah. All right, who would like the privilege of the first question to Danny? What was the experience, this guy? He's been through the mill a bit as well. Some man over here. Got it, Danny, we've got a question right here from the gentleman in the red coat.
Yeah, I was just interested, what project are you developing? What have you done for the community?
Now you give me the opportunity to talk about
That's an invitation.
Basically, when I had Neo, we was building the physical branches and the retail locations. The one that we created in Nicosia cost 400,000 euros to basically fit out the shell. It looked absolutely beautiful. Now it's the most expensively decorated beauty salon in Cyprus. Basically, we looked at the ATM model, and the ATM or the BTM business model for me is extremely flawed. It's expensive to deploy a location. So what I looked to do was to reduce the cost of deploying an ATM type location to below £100. So I've managed to do that with hardware and the software solutions that I've built. It was literally just myself working away, coding away, tinkering away, building the hardware, building the software, and the website and the front end and the API. I've got more people on board now that it's going to start moving forward. More people that I can go to for advice and stuff, because I was pretty much shunned by everybody within the community for like 2.5 years. Well, I couldn't really talk. I couldn't talk about what was happening. I just had to sit there and take it. So basically, I've got a point of sale terminal now where people can buy and sell Bitcoin. They can receive delivery over the Lightning Network. They can pay to sell Bitcoin over the Lightning Network and on legacy on-chain transactions as well. And the terminal also now doubles up as a payment processing terminal for Lightning payments. People probably seen in the news that Eclair have now finally launched their mainnet Lightning wallet. So people will be able to pay at the point of sale using the Lightning Network. So you don't have to stand around waiting for a 10-minute confirmation at the point of sale anymore. And we're starting to roll that out around the UK within the next 3 to 4 weeks. The business model that I've chosen is basically the end user will use BtheBank.com for the actual interaction with the company, where they can redeem vouchers and sell their bitcoins to the service. But I've built a partnership network where the partner handles all the merchant relationships. So they're the ones that go out and spread the word and spread the terminals and get them installed in locations. And there's a commission sharing agreement between the retail locations and the partners and BtheBank. So everybody gets the little bit of a cut, and we can deploy literally 1,000 locations for the price of 4 or 5, well, probably even less, 2 or 3 maybe, Bitcoin ATMs, depending on the manufacturer. So hopefully we can spread the Bitcoin use case much further and wider and give people access to that store of value. And hopefully people can learn and educate themselves and not just buy Bitcoin because I think they're going to get rich and use it for what I believe and think is its main use cases of screwing the banks over. So yeah.
So if I get this right, this new business of yours is targeted primarily at merchants who want to accept Bitcoin, but in this case via the Lightning Network, right?
Yeah, they can accept point of sale transactions literally like they would accept a Visa or MasterCard. Really waiting for an NFC enabled Bitcoin wallet, Lightning Bitcoin wallet. The hardware is already there for it because then it becomes contactless and really quick.
It's exactly the same experience as your Apple Wallet.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Save your details in there.
But Lightning, yeah. Because for me, Bitcoin has its flaws, and people do choose to go down the rabbit hole and then ignore every naysayer like George Stolfi, Isabella Kaminska from the FT. They sometimes, believe it or not, they do have good points. Like David Gerard, I think he's really against blockchain, which I kind of agree with on many levels. But once you get into Bitcoin, you learn. Sorry? Is
it against blockchain or Blockstream or what?
Blockchain.
Blockchain is a
Attack of the 50-foot blockchain, I think his book was called.
Interesting.
And people get into Bitcoin and then they get on Reddit and things like that. And when they see some negative or some criticisms of Bitcoin in the space, there's a lot of smart people that are very clever with the way they word things. So there's always an answer to every criticism. And I found that all along. And I was somewhat guilty, and it's of exactly the same thing. It's taking on those smartly worded comebacks to every criticism that's ever published in any media article. And people don't accept that Bitcoin is actually flawed. It has problems scaling and things like that. We are on the right track, I believe, of smart scaling and making the cars that run along the road much more efficient to use up the space. And the companies that are using that space are technically incentivized to use that space as effectively as possible, like with batching and things like that. It's not very private. Like confidential transactions are like now 3 times the size. We need to make some more improvements on that to get some real financial privacy on the Bitcoin blockchain itself. But it is happening. It's just not here in this instance. But the work is being done. So when people do have criticisms of Bitcoin, you should be more open-minded to it and actually, like I follow at Bookcoin on Twitter because every negativity, I don't know if people have actually been on our Bookcoin. It's literally, it's hilarious, but you need to be able to zone out and not react to all of that negativity. Even if you know that it's wrong, you don't need to go and tell them that they're stupid and everything. But for some of the criticisms, people should take them on board more and realize that Bitcoin isn't perfect. And the coins that claim to be really aren't either. So, hopefully.
Anyone else got another question? I'll go there and here. Anyone else want a question?
So what lessons in terms of legal and regulatory have you brought on board this time from your past experience?
Regulatory, I was one of the idiots that was sat in Parliament in Cyprus telling them we want to be regulated, really stupidly. However, with the kicker on that was we want to be regulated, but we want to help write the regulations so they're not restrictive on bringing people, because this was at a time when Bitcoin was really scary to everybody. So what my message was constantly, and every time the Central Bank of Cyprus put out a stupid press release saying Bitcoin's dangerous after they'd just overseen the bail-in and the theft of people's money into their bank accounts, was we want to be regulated, but we want to be regulated fairly, which promotes innovation and basically gives us some more legitimacy in the eyes of the regulators. As much as, like, I know everyone would love to be completely free and everything, and like with BtheBank that I've developed now, we push the boundaries on what is required of us, but I don't want to go to jail. I did one night in Wandsworth. That was enough. I'm not really a jailbird. I didn't get visited in the showers or anything like that, but yeah, I like my freedom too much, and the state, as wrong as they can be, is there. They do have guns, and they could throw me away for a long time. So I will always adhere, but I will push it as far as I possibly can without stepping over that line. And I know people like Theo really advocate for smashing the state.
So I have a question for this gentleman right here.
The whole NFC enabled thing, how, if let's say Visa and MasterCard are kind of like, you know, they pretty much have the majority of the market, and then you've got Android Pay and Apple Pay, how are you going to fit into that or ever get accepted in any way or form to have something that we can just go and seamlessly pay with our BTC at a POS in 1 second, bang, gone with an NFC enabled device, when Apple Pay and Samsung Pay are never going to let you into that space?
It's not a case of asking them to whether or not they're going to let people into that space. You kind of just have to take it. That is why the payment processing is literally a byproduct of the buying and selling Bitcoins using cash at many retail locations across the country or across the world when we eventually push out across like Australia, Canada, and the UK, hopefully by the end of this year. So with regards to that, there is benefits of accepting Bitcoin, and there have been from the outset for your goods and services. I don't know if you're aware of like how inefficient the legacy systems are with Visa and MasterCard. And there's also people that are providing services that are charged higher fees because they're considered high risk for like Visa and MasterCard processing services, like card acquirement services. In Cyprus, there was a monopoly on the card acquirement, on the card processing side of things by a company called JCC. The European Union forced the Federal Bank of Middle East, or forced the Cypriot government to bring in the FBME to create a competing card payment network. Everything online in Cyprus was considered high risk. So you had 60-day settlement terms, and you was paying 13% plus for accepting payments online in Cyprus. Even McDonald's couldn't get their own special deal for like less than 3%, which everywhere else in the world, McDonald's don't pay squat for anything really. But in Cyprus, they was adamant that you can't get a special deal. So you couldn't pay for your Big Mac using your Visa card or your debit or your credit or debit card. But McDonald's in Cyprus was well open to accepting Bitcoin through NeoMB. And we was literally one director away from convincing him for them to accept it before everything exploded in a ball of flames. But yeah, they're not going to like it. But if they want to come and buy me out in a couple of years when I've got 100,000 locations, so be it. I'll quite happily settle every single person that's got a gripe with me and go live on a yacht in the middle of the Med, happily. So we'll see what it brings. But yeah, don't think, oh, because there's a big competitor in there, it's ripe for innovation. Everything is.
Right, mate.
From a merchant standpoint, when I have your device in my shop, does it mean for me that I accept Bitcoin and I keep it in Bitcoin, or is it liquidated to?
You can do either. It's up to the merchant. Unfortunately, we're not at that stage of proliferation where everybody just wants Bitcoin because they know it's going to be worth more or believe it's going to be worth more or anything like that. You have to be a bit of a realist, and the service that we've created basically nets all the payments, so payment processing and cash that they've received for selling our vouchers, which can be redeemed for Bitcoin, or paying cash out at that location if that's something that they want to offer as well. Helps keep their cash handling fees with the bank much lower if they're paying out for people that have sold Bitcoin, the crazy people that have sold Bitcoin, I should say. So, yeah, the merchant can do whatever they want. I really didn't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but it seems to be heading that way.
You mentioned the Lightning Network for Bitcoin. I was just wondering, and it might be a presentation in itself, but would you give an overview of how that can affect the blockchain and for Bitcoin?
The Lightning Network basically shifts a lot of the small, it enables smaller transactions to occur off the main blockchain, which prevents bloat. So when you create your channel with another node on a network, you sign a transaction, which then locks the funds into that channel. You can then send those funds backwards and forwards across that channel as many times as you want with practically no fees if it's just a direct transaction between the two people. You can also send multi-hop payments. So if we wanted to send a transaction between me and the guy in the red jacket, and I had a channel with you and you had a channel with the guy in the red jacket, I can send the funds to you, you then send it on to the guy in the red jacket. You make a tiny, tiny fee for helping that transaction take place. And then when, say, me and you decide to close our channel and put the funds back onto the main chain so they can be spent again, basically we close the channel together. We make an agreement to close the channel to basically make it really simple or oversimplify it. We sign a transaction which closes the channel. Me and you no longer have that connection, but you still do with that guy over there. And we can move the funds that I've sent to you, which you've received, you can then spend on the main Bitcoin network. It is a massive subject, and I'm really dumb. So look for Starkness and people like Roast Beef and stuff. LND is probably my favourite implementation of the Lightning Network. Or Jack Mauler's as well on Twitter. He's done the Zap Lightning Network, Zap Lightning Wallet.
I came up with this metaphor for the Lightning Network the other day. I imagine like the London Underground, right? So if you think of main Bitcoin transactions as driving in London, right, you're just going to get congestion, right? Whereas off-chain transactions, it's kind of like going to an underground station and then zipping across several zones. So in the Lightning Network, there still are fees based on how many hops you have, basically how many stations you go through. Or in London, it works on zones, doesn't it? The more zones you cross, the more it costs, right? Or it's a way of bypassing the traffic, isn't it? So you go in one station, which would be like a Lightning hub, go through several channels, right? And then you would pop up somewhere else, effectively alleviating the traffic on the roads. So that's conceptually how it works. So it's invisible.
I think the hub is probably not the best analogy because Bcashers have tried to use the hub and spoke model, but the network topology seems to have worked out a lot more decentralized right now than just well-connected hubs.
Yeah,
there is service providers that are obviously going to have a lot more open channels than Bob and Alice types. But at the end of the day, it's completely voluntary. So anybody can become a well-connected hub and open channels with other people and receive payments and route payments and get paid for it. There's an incentive there. I know it's only small, but over time, if a Satoshi becomes worth $1, we're laughing.
One Satoshi for $1.
Yeah.
Exactly. Did you have a question, mate? They were brilliant.
Thanks a lot for your talk. It's excellent.
Wait for it.
Really, you've got really low standards.
I like the building idea anyway. So, with your experience and obviously some research I guess you've done so far, what are your thoughts about, obviously you've gone for physical point of sale at merchants in the UK, but how would you contrast that with, say, people accepting Bitcoin online, which is obviously a lot easier, but still the adoption is sort of low, possibly?
Yeah.
And also in other parts of the world, you know, places where the monetary system is a lot worse than it is here.
Yeah, I do know that the UN is working on a solution that basically cuts out the middleman, like the corrupt middlemen on financial aid payments, so they can literally send Bitcoin directly to the route of where it's supposed to go, so it doesn't end up in a dictator's bank account and things like that. It's programs like that. I'm not really one for promoting like state aid and things like that, but it's going to be little things like that. Even if it's a private enterprise that's driving adoption. When I had Neo, one of the issues that I created was we had too many things going on at once, because there's actually a company that we had called NeoMB Kenya, which was going to work with M-Pesa, which is the mobile phone credit, to enable cross-border transactions using Bitcoin and stuff, because one of the connections that I had went to university with the owner and the creator of M-Pesa, so I've made that connection. I was like, oh great, we could do that, but because we had so much other things and it all got stretched and just bad decisions by myself, basically, it stretched everything too far, so it never really took off. But there is companies now that are doing that, and with regards to like merchant adoption online, I think the Lightning Network is something that was needed, but it's also the whole chicken and the egg scenario. The BTC Pay Server, I really don't like BitPay. I heard a lot of stories, like internal stories from them like years ago, that kind of signaled that it wasn't a great place to be, or a great place to work, or an actual just a great company. And when they came out with all the whole Segwit 2x crap, as a signatory on that, and the way that they pushed that, it kind of just put the nail in the coffin for me to ever say, oh, you should use BitPay and stuff like that. But now with Nicholas Dorier, that's done the BTC Pay Server and stuff like that, you can use that at a point of sale if you want to put it on a tablet and stuff like that. And I still think that it's still far too early for competition to be a problem in Bitcoin. There is such a big pie that people just haven't started eating yet. There's a solution there that's open source and free and available to use, and should push it as much as possible, especially like with Lightning. With the on-chain thing, it's kind of hard to justify saying to a merchant, yeah, you can accept payments, but it's got to be over a couple of £100, because the fee market is working as it's designed to. When you've got really high fees on the actual main network. But yeah, moving forward, now we've got Lightning, as I say, the opportunities and the possibilities are endless. So it's something that should start moving forward a lot quicker.
What does the name NeoMB mean? Where did you get that?
Neo, as pointed out by the Chinese Ethereum, is something new. It was a new economy. B was the payment network, and when the bail-ins was happening and the president of Cyprus was talking in the media, explaining to the country how they was about to take all the money to bail out or bail in or basically get the bankers' heads back above water, he said, we need a plan B, because plan B, like the initial plan was to 8% of everything over €1,000. So we was like, okay, B Bitcoin, like it's plan B, we can run with that. And the branding was like the black and yellow, so it kind of worked.
It's like an alternative or a new plan B.
Yeah, the neo economy is here was one of the branding taglines. We ran a massive marketing campaign. I was like the first Bitcoin company to run TV adverts, radio adverts, all the magazines. We literally took over everything. It's the most prolific and advertising campaign that had ever been in Cyprus. Like the feedback, the daily soaps, like we have EastEnders and Coronation Street and stuff, the equivalents in Cyprus was like mentioning, like somebody would get pulled over and they'd say, what's your name? Oh, my name's Neo, because the advert was all about who is Neo. And the moral of the advertising campaign was everybody's Neo, because everybody can be self-sovereign and take back control of their own money and everything. But it was all far too early and far too flawed for that business model to really work, like in hindsight.
Too early for what? 'Cause
together.
You needed like the Lightning Network? Is that what you mean by too early?
Too early. Bitcoin wasn't mature enough as a network, and the infrastructure surrounding it. I was trying to do a deal with, or I was in the process of doing a deal with the Cyprus Stock Exchange to enable us to start offering institutional level products and to have Bitcoin traded on the new commodities exchange that the Cyprus Stock Exchange was trying to launch. There was talk of the Cyprus Stock Exchange being sold off. Like they was trying to talk us into maybe getting involved with the purchase of an actual stock exchange to enable us to offer Bitcoin products, and it was just far too early. This is like 2013, 2014 that this was happening. I was flying to Switzerland to have talks to buy a private bank, because it was just after, because nobody could get a bank account. We was all getting chain emails where banks were sending us, BTCE, and every other like Bitcoin company, just all CC'd into the same email. So we're not dealing with Bitcoin companies, like literally every bank. And I just got to the point where I was like, because of like all the factor reporting, I don't know if you're aware of that with America, and like where they cracked open all the Swiss banks. So a lot of the small privately owned Swiss banks that had banking licenses were suddenly up for sale. You could buy a bank for less than the actual bond it took to get the license. And one of the idiots that worked for me exclaimed at TNABC in 2014, in January 2014, that Bitcoin companies shouldn't be looking to banks to give them account. Bitcoin companies should be looking to buy banks and to sit at their table so we can control our own destiny, basically. Maybe there's a few people in the space now with enough money to really go at that. I wouldn't ever like pump money into an ICO that's promising, oh, we're going to get a banking license. No, you're not. Show us where you got your capital from.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what
so-
10x are trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Pick up a bank.
Yeah, NeoB was literally the first real attempt at a physical Bitcoin bank, and it was just dumb.
But is that the killer question? Like, where do you get your capital? If you say an ICO, is it? No.
Pretty much like some pseudo-anonymous people on the internet.
Right.
Kind of not the greatest start when you're sitting down with a central bank trying to get a banking license.
When they're all about risk. So
Yeah, and that's what people like hate on banks and stuff like that, which I do too. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is still really risky for them in their eyes. So they literally have to manage risk.
Right.
Because they don't want to be the person that says, yeah, you can have a bank account, and then all of a sudden, because of something that company has done, they're then liable to the FCA for a £400 million fine because that company's done something stupid.
Right.
Like knowingly sold coins to somebody that's gone on to use them on a darknet market and things like that.
It depends what banks we're talking about. Central banks, investment banks,
Yeah.
corporate banks, retail banks,
Yeah, retail banks are really risk averse, and that's who literally provides your business banking services.
Right.
for allowing people to pay you for just buying and selling Bitcoin and stuff like that. So.
And those aren't necessarily the ones we hate the most, right? We hate the central banks the most, right? And the investment banks second most.
Yeah, the central bank used to hate me, in Cyprus anyway.
Danny, you right? I've got a bit of a tough question for you. Near and B, people lost Bitcoin in that, right?
Yeah. Well, they basically hodled them for a lot longer than they thought they would. They are being returned.
Yeah, so how do you plan to return them, and if you don't mind, how much was lost?
Just over, back then it was just over 9,000 Bitcoins, which sounds crazy now, but when Bitcoin was less than $100, it wasn't as crazy as it seems. There's a few legal cases to be settled at the European level that are ongoing. And I've also basically said that my personal profits from my new ventures and stuff are going into the pool to pay the people that backed Neo back to the original price that they would have paid to get involved with Neo and B. So that's what's happening. For me, everything is just like a long-term project. People had already written it off. The easiest thing for me to be would have just like walked off into the sunset, built something, put a sock puppet in front of me and just collected and got paid. Where that just isn't me. I wanted the truth to be out. I didn't want to be known as an absolute crook of a person or a scammer and things like that. People can hold that opinion of me. I don't really care. But for the people that was decent to me throughout, and they were generally like the people that had technically lost the most and invested the most in the project, have always been supportive and helpful and things like that. So it's for them that I'm putting things straight and working my nuts off to literally make that happen and make it possible. So that's how and why that's happening.
Yes, so Danny, talking something about the building. So in the past, what's the most expensive lesson you have had or you have experienced?
The most
and also
expensive what, sorry?
Lesson.
The most expensive
the
lesson?
most expensive lesson you have.
Opening my mouth to say that I'm going to sort everything out.
Danny, excuse me, that's the first question. The second question is about talking about the future, about the price. What the many US dollars suggestion you present all of us to make money about the price?
Sorry, I didn't get the second part of it.
The second question is about the price.
Yes.
So what's you many US dollars suggesting for us to make money?
If I knew what the price was, so basically you want my prediction on the price in the future. If I knew that, I'd make the bet and make a lot of money. Okay. I invest all my time, effort, and life beyond my family and Liverpool Football Club into Bitcoin and to building all of everything that I'm doing and working towards. So for me, if Bitcoin's always going to be one Bitcoin. 100 million Satoshis. So that's the way that I look at it. And if I knew what the price was going to be, I'd go long or short it and things like that. But essentially, just by being involved and investing the time and effort and money into building stuff, I'm clearly long on Bitcoin. It's 21 million coins, Satoshis at a million, say a couple of million have been lost forever. There's 7.4 billion people in the world. You can do the math. There's not enough to go around. So, especially when you're competing against currencies that are being inflated constantly, the dollar value is long-term, in my opinion, one-way traffic. I know the short-term, it looks like Bart Simpson's head with the way that it's going up and down. But, yeah, I'd never, ever go and stake. I'm not one of these people that would tweet, 30K Bitcoin, and then delete it, or anything like that. yeah, or attach a price to my name on Twitter or anything like that. If you want to understand like the long-term view, Safieddine Ammous has launched his book, the Bitcoin Standard. That's something that I've started reading, and it seems to be in line with a lot of like personally held views on like Bitcoin itself and the way that it can work out economically over the long term. But yeah, I'd never ever stake my reputation to a price claim. What little reputation I have.
The Bitcoin Standard. That's what I'm talking about. We've probably got time for a couple more comments. Anybody want to make one? Anybody else? Or should we let them go?
Anybody want to comment?
Go once, twice, 3 times? Sold? Round of applause for Danny Bruce, please. Thank you.